Greetings and welcome to the Old Patrol HQ podcast. I'm your host, Gil Maza, retired Border Patrol agent, Class 313 out of Glencoe, Georgia. Today we speak with retired Border Patrol Chief and ICE Director Ron Vitiello, Class 174, who also worked under the Trump administration. He could have retired and spent all his time catering to his wife, Nuri, but instead, he decides to run for the state Senate in Virginia. He runs as the one candidate who knows the border issue firsthand from every angle, but he also knows his way around the other issues as well, as you will see, and he's ready to bring sanity back to the Senate. Come join us for that conversation. Good morning, Chief Vitiello, and welcome to the Old Patrol HQ podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. Good to be with you.
Well, it's our pleasure to have you on, and I am so looking forward to a great conversation between Border Patrol agents, except for the fact that, you were in charge of me once, so it may not have been, a party of equals, but here, all things being equal, we're going to have I hope we'll have a great conversation about what's going on with an individual that knows what's going on.
No, I appreciate it. This is, I always love, communicating with formers and retired guys like myself. And so, yeah, this is going to be awesome.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? My audience is retired active Border Patrol largely, but I want this conversation not only to go to them. They're going to understand the talk, right? The academy, the class numbers, all those kind of things, our Border Patrol traditions and things like that, our phraseology. But I want the average citizen to be able to listen to this and go, okay, wait a minute. Here's a man who has served, who has been in the freaking front lines, has gone from the ranks and file all the way to the top, and has seen everything from both ends, and it can give me the reality of this situation. So with that idea in mind, can we start out a little bit by just having you introduce yourself to our audience and give us a little run through, quick synopsis of your career up until the time you retired, and then we'll talk about kind of what you're doing right now.
Oh, yeah. Amazing. So I started in the Border Patrol in 1985, Class 174, Loredo, Texas, hardcore. That's the class motto and our class T-shirt. So Loredo, Texas, my whole class, 174, the whole entire class went to Loredo Sector. It was unique at the time. That made there was a lot of talk about it at the academy.
Yeah.
Because, some of the classes were matrix, some people were going to Yuma, some people were going to California. Our entire group went to Loredo Sector, a great place to learn the job. For those of the retired that are with us and the agents that are listening, Loredo's one of those places on the border that has everything in the sense of you have a horse patrol, there's a bike patrol, there's a river team, a city patrol, checkpoints, sign cutting. It has everything. Okay. So it's a great place to learn the job. And I was fortunate to have journeyman agents that didn't ignore me, right? We were, they showed us how to do the job, and I'm grateful for that. Stayed there for my first transfer away. I think I had, 87. So a couple of years in, they opened the station in Dallas, Texas. They called it Dallas. It was near the airport there in Euless, but they had an operational station there that they opened in 86. I got there in 87. Spent 4 years on the ground as a frontline agent in the environs of Dallas-Fort Worth, which was amazing. Something that's never, that doesn't happen anymore. Went back to Laredo when we had 2 journeyman levels, right, 9 and 11.
Yeah.
Got promoted from a GS9 back to Laredo as an 11. Stayed there for a number of years. Got my first supervisor job there in Laredo. And then took my first staff.
Real quick, Chief, excuse me. So first of all, you carried the wheel gun.
Oh yeah, for sure. Ruger 686.
Wheel gun, one patcher.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Just wanted to make sure the audience understood that.
Yeah, hold on a sec.
Okay. Oh my God.
That's the first one. That's like my good friend Pat Barry made this for me in retirement, and the one on top is the gun I carried when I graduated from the academy, and for quite a while actually.
That is like the Holy Grail.
Yeah, that's not the gun I carried, but it's one just like it.
Right. No. So, but my gosh, that's some Old Patrol gold right there.
That's right.
Wow.
That's right. Yeah.
I feel
Yeah,
like
it's amazing.
I feel like I need to pause and just kind of like, bow down or something, Wow, that's fantastic, Chief.
Yeah, so made supervisor there in Laredo, stayed a couple of years, got my first staff job when we had regional offices back to Dallas. Did that for a number of years. Went from there to Tucson sector. I worked in Nogales for a couple of years. That's when 9/11 happened,
Right?
which changed all of our lives in
Yeah.
significant ways, and
Yeah.
it was very impactful to the Border Patrol. Right, we changed from this agency that people who lived on the border know and cared about and loved in most cases to a national security implement, right? So it changed everything. So I went to headquarters in 2002 because they were rebuilding. They changed the chain of command. They eliminated those regional offices, and I wanted to be a part of what it looked like in the post 9/11 environment. So I was in the headquarters for starting in 2002. While I was there, got detailed to the department, worked on the ops team for Asa Hutchinson and Randy Beardsworth. That group doesn't exist anymore, but at the time, they had somebody from all of the components that are in DHS on an ops team that kind of advised the secretary and the undersecretary. I was the Border Patrol expert for 13 months in the headquarters of the Department of Homeland Security, which was an amazing thing.
I can imagine.
Just to see the department getting built and how everybody was going to relate to each other and all those kind of things. 2005, got promoted to be the chief in Swanton sector. Awesome place. I highly recommend if people go to the northern border, they look at that as a locale because it's, great people, amazing environment. The summers are epic in Swanton, Vermont. From there, I got promoted to the senior executive service to be the chief in Rio Grande Valley. And there's like a long story there. But the first time in my career where my family and I lived in a town where we actually had family. My wife grew up in McAllen, so going back to RGV was
and that explains a lot.
Yeah, a dream of a lifetime. And so did that for not long enough. Neither of my runs as chief were as long as I wanted them to be. But a couple of years at that, and then went back to headquarters in 2010 to be the chief or the deputy chief at headquarters. Did that for a long time.
I remember you there.
Yeah, and then in 2017, when the administration changed, Donald Trump was the president. They made me chief of the Border Patrol, a job I never imagined myself having, but was honored to be in that place at that time and be the chief of the Border Patrol. Spent some time in that office, and then when they nominated Kevin McAleenan to be the commissioner, he had to be confirmed by the Senate, and so he pulled me up or down to the fourth floor from being chief to acting deputy commissioner for his quick confirmation, which lasted 13 months.
Okay. Yeah.
So then I moved from there while that detail was ending, and I was negotiating, if you will, with the secretary, the deputy secretary, and Kevin McAleenan, the commissioner, to try to go back to the sixth floor and be the chief of the Border Patrol. The White House asked me to be the director at ICE. And I had choices. They said, hey, you can act, you can be, the deputy, whatever, we want you to run it for a year after Tom Holman left. And I eventually talked to the personnel folks at the White House and realized that being confirmed was important because, it matters. I was in a CBP headquarters when we didn't have a confirmed leader for over 2 years, and it wasn't good for the outfit. It wasn't good for the administration. It wasn't good for the men and women on the front line. So I decided to submit for the nomination, went through that process, got out of the committee. The Homeland Security Committee has jurisdiction over who the ICE director is.
Okay.
That's the committee that vets you and votes you in or out. Got voted in by them to go to the full Senate for confirmation. Something happened at the White House. They pulled the package, and the people expected me to stay as the actor, but I thought they had somebody waiting to take that job, and so I just retired. It was time for me to move on. I had already had in my head from years past that I was going to retire when I was 55. I wasn't going
Yeah.
to wait till the very end. And it was that year. And
So let me
so I
ask you real
submitted my
quick.
package.
Let me ask you real quick. So that jump from green to ice, right? It's got to be a big difference. There got to be a bit traumatic. A lot of us, right? We want to stay green until the end of our career. We want to leave, in a green uniform, right? Things like that. But you jumped in to take over for ice because you felt like they needed someone to come in and kind of take the reins and bring the agency together.
Yeah, I was at the headquarters when ICE and CBP were created.
Okay.
Right, I got there before the department stood up, and I watched that relationship over time. I had pretty much a front row seat, and then was responsible for that relationship for part of my career.
Okay.
And it was really good at that time, and I didn't want that to we were in the middle of the worst surge ever on the southwest border, and I didn't want that relationship to falter. And so I thought if I went over there with Kevin McElhinney being the commissioner and me being the director of ICE, that relationship was going to solidify and become even better. We were going to level it up.
Okay.
And so that was my motivation to say yes. And then we had a big problem. We had the biggest surge on the southwest border we had ever seen at that moment. And so going over there was challenging. It's a completely different culture. I was leaving my big green team behind.
Yes.
And working from afar with them. And so different culture, different attitudes, different operational profiles. But like CBP, like the Border Patrol, lots of hardworking patriots who care about this country. And good news, bad news. The good news is that we were all working together, and you had that team to work with. The bad news is we were in a real problem on the border, and so the learning curve was a little bit less steep than it would have been, right? Coming in for like it was just a normal setting, but everybody was working on the same problem. So I caught up really quick to what was going on in that space.
Yeah.
And worked really hard to represent them like I did for years of the Border Patrol. And so, yeah, it was a great run. Again, good people, difficult times. And when you do hard things together, people learn each other's ways pretty quickly.
Well, that's how we cut our teeth in the patrol, right? The people we work with, the people we, tracked with and hiked with and fought with and everything else out in the field become closer than our families.
That's right. Yeah. So I had a good run, and we'll probably talk about this later, but when I was seeking the nomination, it's a little bit technical, but we'll go for it.
Okay.
The committee has 8 Republicans, 7 Democrats. You got to get on the committee to get on the full floor. And so I needed 8 votes to get out of the committee onto the full Senate floor. And we knew that one or a couple of Republicans weren't going to vote for me. And so I had to meet with the folks that weren't going to support me to find out why. And then I had to meet with a couple of Democrats in case I couldn't convince the folks on the Republican side. And so that really changed. I had worked with the Hill. I had been a witness in Congress at that time, probably 20 times.
Yeah.
So I understood that. And then, from being in headquarters, people that are at headquarters, part of your mission there is to inform the Congress. You're like their decision support arm, right? What's going on the border? What are the resource requirements?
Yeah.
What are you going to do? How does this operational planning work? What does operational control look like? What do you need to accomplish it? And so we were the people that were answering those questions every day.
Okay.
And so going into the committee and meeting with individual members, not on behalf of the organization, but on, for my vote, for me to get out of committee and get onto the full floor, changed the way I see those folks. And here's what I tell people when I'm talking about my race for the U.S. Senate.
Okay.
There's not enough people up there that are in there to serve you. A lot of them are in there to line their own pockets.
Yeah.
A lot of them are in there to perform on television and on Twitter and Instagram. And so we need people in those roles that care deeply about this country and are there to serve.
Yes, but not only that, Chief, not only that, we need people that know exactly what's going on. Now, I don't know that there's many other chiefs out there and retired chiefs that have testified before Congress or brought the information to the Senate and the House as much as you have. So you are running for Senate in Virginia, and one of your planks is that you're the guy in the know, right? You lived it, you worked it, you ate it, you drank it. You have covered the dust and the dirt, the desert and the forest and the sand of across the country, across the sectors. So you're the guy that knows. So let's go there a little bit. You are on the campaign trail, and you come up to individuals and people that are probably not too familiar with the border. How do you approach them, and how do you explain what's going on right now?
Yeah, it's very interesting. We did a Republican club meeting last night, and so what I do, when they give you 10 minutes to speak, or they give you 5 minutes to speak, or whatever, and so I go up there and I talk to them about a number of things, education, and what's happening to our youth in schools is very important here and in other places. But I'm talking to people in Virginia, so that's the first topic I hit. We need to disinfect our schools from this woke ideology and sexualization that's going on. I talk about the budget at the Department of Education, which is, I hope you're sitting down. You're sitting down. It's $88 billion. Okay? $88 billion of your hard-earned tax money going to grants and all kinds of woke ideology. So we talk about universal school choice for parents and empowering parents and making curriculum and classrooms transparent and accountable to the parents that send their kids there, not to the government, not to the school board, not to the, like all these wokesters and the teachers union.
Yep.
So we talk about education. We talk about energy, because we have sold our children a myth that we can electrify this economy, like we could put all the things that are on wheels on batteries. It's a fantasy. It's not going to work. We've also told them that if they stop driving SUVs and stop eating meat, that the planet is going to cool off.
Yeah.
So we talk about energy policy in the country and where we need to be and where we are. Stop giving money to people who hate us.
Amen.
Stop allowing Iran to put their oil on the international market, because they're raising billions of dollars. And they hate us, and we know they hate us because they bomb our troops overseas. We also talk about the federal debt and government spending. As a person that ran the budget at Border Patrol, I understand the incentives for spending at the executive level. I also understand it in the appropriations and authorizations in the Congress.
Yes.
And so I know a lot about that. I worked on the pay reform package that we had. I restructured how we do relocations in the Border Patrol, saving billions of dollars for the taxpayer. So I talk about that, and I leave the border stuff for last.
Yeah.
Because in a lot of the rooms I'm in with these active Republicans, they've never talked to anybody that's actually lived or breathed border.
Yeah.
And so I save that to the end because that's all they want to talk about. Once they realize that they have a Border Patrol agent in the room, they're like,
it happens every time. But what I want to say is that you're obviously right. You are well informed, and you have a good grasp of not just the border, because you're not going to win on just the border. You need to be able to, there's a lot more going on here. There's lives and people and economy and education and medicine and all these things going on. And I am really glad to see you able to, summarize that so well, so quickly, but that's not just about the border, even though that's going to be probably the lion's share of what we're going to talk about today. But I just wanted to say that because it's impressive.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. So we when we talk about the border, when they realize what I did for my entire adult life, they're like, "Hey, Chief, tell us about this. Tell us about that." And so I'll synopsize what I see happening right now today.
Okay.
This is the worst border surge of illegal migration than we've ever seen in the history of the border. Right, the Border Patrol is 100 years old this year.
Yes.
We've never seen anything like that. And I will tell you that when Alejandro Mayorkas gets on television and tells everybody, "Oh, this is a worldwide phenomenon. We're seeing trouble in the region and climate change," and he blames it on everybody except himself.
Yes.
That's a bald-faced lie.
Absolutely.
He needs to be held accountable for it. The worst surge that we've ever seen. About right now, I think the numbers are a little bit muted because Mexico has taken on Nuevo Leon as a project to kind of slow down migration going into Del Rio and Eagle Pass.
Right.
But we're still seeing more people every 24 hours than we've ever seen before.
Yes.
And the secretary himself said that 85% of the encounters of Border Patrol are being released into the United States.
Yeah, he said above 85%, but yeah.
We see New York, Denver, Chicago, Los Angeles, Boston, all seeing the negative effects of mass migration on the southwest border because those people are not staying in Eagle Pass, and they're becoming a burden to every large city in America, and they're going to every single city and town across the country. The public healthcare resources, our schools are going to suffer. There is already a burden on law enforcement and public safety because these Venezuelan gangs are very vicious and violent, and they're already making a name for themselves in the United States, having only been here for the last 2.5 years. And so we're all seeing that happen, and that's just the crime and burdens on local communities. The other day in the news, they reported almost 300 people from China entered in the San Diego sector in one single day.
Yeah.
I mean, you were on the line for a long time. I was on the line. Seeing somebody from China was a very rare event.
Yes.
And not that it didn't happen, but it never happened in the kind of numbers we're seeing today. And so that risk and that burden on local communities is a problem. But the risk that we're facing for these military-aged men from places like China and Yemen and other parts of the Middle East, other countries that hate us, that risk is off the charts. And it's just a matter of time that we're going to have different kinds of burdens and the risks that we're facing for these people. We have no idea who they are, and then and then on top of that, you have this whole fentanyl crisis, which is killing our youth. And
Chief, real quick too, is like retired Chief Rodney Scott said, even from the beginning, he said, don't just focus on the illegal alien issue. This is a homeland security, open border breach like we've never seen, right? And when I say to you that right now, as it stands, every major institution in this country has already been changed to accommodate, to bring in, to deal with or just facilitate this entire illegal alien invasion, right? This entire illegal alien thing. I mean, what institution has not been already changed? Medicine, schooling, law enforcement, big business, big tech. Everybody's catering to the illegal alien right now.
No, it's a terrible burden on the society and the culture and the sovereignty of this country. We're giving it away. You and I worked hard and took an oath and served people to preserve what we have in this country, this culture, this safety, the beauty of America. And these folks are just walking right in and taking full advantage of it.
But Chief, weren't we sold the idea that allowing millions of unvetted illegals into our country was going to be good for us, was going to be good for diversity, was going to be good for economy? I don't see those states, I don't see New York, Chicago, and them asking for more aliens.
No, what they're asking for is more of your tax money.
Yes, not to stop it.
No, exactly right. They're not asking for a change in the policy. They're not asking for this president to do his job or the secretary. They're asking for buckets of money so they can
keep
hand it out.
And what about the infrastructure, Chief, that's already been put in place to facilitate this mass, influx and release of aliens for, decades to come? If they get reelected, this is just going to continue unabated nonstop.
Yeah, no, it's really, really bad, and we can hope that because it's not going to change. To your point, it's not going to change until we have a different president, and hopefully that is going to be in November, starting in January. So I've been to a couple of not ours. Well, they belong to the taxpayer, but these processing facilities.
Yeah.
I think the one in Del Rio is called Firefly. I don't know what they call the one in El Paso. CPC, I guess.
Donna, yeah, I think it's the Donna one. The Donna one, yeah. Who knows?
Anyway, you think about that. You know, like as a guy that ran and led the Border Patrol, I understand like the costs of these things.
Yes.
Right. That infrastructure is the most expensive construction on the planet.
Yeah.
I'm not saying like, oh yeah, you know, it costs, you know, $100 more than, you know, building a house or $1,000 more. We pay millions and millions of dollars just to make it appear. And the one that I visited in El Paso has no municipal water, has no municipal sewage, has no electric connectivity. So every bite of food, every nail and window and piece of plastic and computer, it all comes in on a wheel, including the power, which is, it runs on generator power, like huge generators.
Yeah.
And I did the math for the one in El Paso. It costs probably $1 billion a year to keep that thing running.
Holy shit.
With all of the infrastructure. Think about that. It's $1 billion a year just to have it.
Yes.
Just to have it there. That's not counting how many millions of dollars they did to put it up. And when this crisis is over, and hopefully that is soon, when this crisis is over, we're going to have to pay somebody to take all that down. For our investment of $5 billion or so, it's all going to disappear. There won't be anything left except a bald spot in the desert.
Well, unless we turn them into deportation centers.
Well, yeah, I mean, you could do that, but my point is the choices that this administration has made.
Times how many though, Chief? Right? Because it's not just that. You said $1 billion for just that one.
That's right.
Now add them all across the board. So let me ask you this: recently, a bill was being bandied about in in the House, and a lot of people came out to champion it, including the Border Patrol Union specifically, basically saying that without this bill, we can't do anything about this influx. Chief, what do you say to that?
Well, I'll say that Congress needs to act on this problem. And I think that there was a resource package in this bill that would have been beneficial to the operation. But let's start on the principle of it. We're negotiating a border security package.
Yeah, which is bullshit right there.
Let's start right there. Like, what are you negotiating? You either have border security or you don't.
Yeah.
And right now we do not. And so, Congress putting this turd of a bill up, which would not have fixed the problem. Now, they do have a role to adjust the bar for asylum hearings and asylum claims. Like, I want them to do that. This was partially in the bill, but I'm not sure I want Joe Biden's team to hire thousands of asylum officers.
Yeah.
Right. So that was another problem. And then this threshold about when they were going to close the border, when they weren't going to close the border.
So they can close the border. They're going to hold us hostage. They're going to hold the security of the country hostage when they could cap that right now if they wanted to. But they're literally holding off to negotiate for Ukraine and for all these other countries that, basically own our leadership in D.C. for something they could be doing right now.
Yeah. See if I got this. I would encourage your listeners to go to Senator Ron Johnson's page. He was the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee when I was going through the nomination process. Great patriot. He has a chart on his website that looks at the traffic at the border, and then he's benchmarked the highs and the lows with policy decisions made by the executive branch or by Congress, maybe, and it'll show you one of the dips in activity that he hasn't benchmarked is November, December, January, February of 2019.
Okay.
So the president gets elected in November of 2019. Not 19. That's not right. Anyway, the election of Donald Trump is November 3rd. Right after that election, right after we all, were surprised, there's a huge dip in activity on the southwest border that lasts all the way into the spring of his first term, his first year in office.
Yep.
No change in immigration policy, no change in asylum review and screening, no change in Border Patrol resources, other than we have a new sheriff in town. He wants to build wall and he wants to regulate immigration in a way that most presidents are afraid to talk about.
Yep.
Just the rhetoric alone and him becoming the new president made people stay at home. And so when the Congress comes forward, or anybody else that advocates, oh, we need this law change, we need this, we need that, he had none of that. And he wasn't even like, we weren't even working on his problems yet. And there was it was like a very sleepy border in those couple of months. Now, the smugglers figured it out by April of that year. We were overwhelmed.
Right.
But when Congress comes forward and says we can't do, or when anybody comes forward and says we can't do, they're just not being factual about it.
Of course.
When the secretary says he has control of the border, it's the same thing. We have operational control. There's no crisis at the border. That's BS, and we all know it. And then, I do understand that fixing the asylum laws would be beneficial for Congress to do. And I also realize that CBP and the department are up against it. They've spent lots and lots of money on this problem that they don't have, that they were not appropriated for. So the resource package is important. At some point, something in the government is going to break to pay the bills that CBP is writing, the checks that they're writing, because that happens every year. When I was in ICE, the day I walked in the door as the new acting director, there were 23 million in the hole. Like that was like in June of that year.
Yeah.
Right. We weren't even in September yet, and we were 23 million in the hole. So I know that the department is in the hole, and CBP probably is. ICE may or may not be, because they don't have the kind of inventory that they had when I was there. But they're going to have to reprogram money to finish this year. And if Congress writes a supplemental, like a border security package, and gives them resources, that would be a good thing, because they're in they have a big problem.
But
and
basically,
what happens
Chief, just to keep this Titanic ship afloat.
Yeah, because they've done things that they were not allocated for. And if Congress doesn't rescue them with a supplemental, then they got to find it somewhere else. And what usually happens is, like, we're going to build this ship for the Coast Guard. Well, we're not going to do that now. We're going to take that money and we're going to fill the hole that ICE or CBP made, not because they wanted to, but because the operations demanded it. And so that's the dysfunction that occurs on our border every day. That's the relationship that we have with Congress, which say, like right now they're saying, hey, give us, I think the border package was like 14 billion or something like that, maybe north of that. I'm here to tell you that the Border Patrol budget, when I was the deputy and the chief, is a little over 3.5 billion. And so when the whole department is asking for a supplemental in the double digit, $14 billion, they're in bad shape.
But Chief, we also have seen in the last 1,102 days of this administration, we've seen record numbers of illegal aliens being allowed in, processed, and released into the country. 5,000-6,000 a day being released. But this has happened the entire time. So now the records that this administration is breaking are not previous records of the Border Patrol or DHS or this country. It's the records of the country. Right?
Yes,
they're breaking
100%.
their own records at this point.
More death of people trying to cross.
Yes,
more
that's another thing.
TSDB hits than ever before.
Yeah. Rescues like crazy. I mean, we've always rescued people. That's part of our job. But now this administration has put the lives of our agents and officers on the border at risk, because they have to continuously now have to be jumping in the water or doing all these excessive rescues, because of the influx that's coming in. I mean, it's record numbers of rescues, record numbers of deaths just in this administration alone.
Yeah, with really no end in sight, right?
Exactly.
They held us all. They held this whole border security package. They held America at hostage for pass the bill,
Yeah.
And it was a turn. I mean, it was really it really had no good. Well, it had some good as it relates to like the asylum and the resource package.
Yeah.
But it wasn't going to fix this problem.
Yeah.
It was going to codify it and make it worse for the rest of time.
Now, what do you think about the recent impeachment of Alejandro Mayorkas?
Yeah, it's very interesting. It is a demonstration of the frustration that people who want this problem fixed have, right? So the House is in Republican hands, a razor thin majority. They talked about impeaching him after he came and refused to say that he had a crisis on the border
Right.
or that the border was out of control. And when he made those statements in a public hearing, it was played on TV for weeks after.
Yep.
That's play stupid games, get stupid prizes. I mean, that's where we are. Let me just tell you that I worked with every single Homeland Security secretary, including this one. Every single one of them. Not no, like I wasn't at the big boys table when Tom Ridge or Michael Chertoff were the secretaries, but I know them. I know what they did while they were there. I was, part of the implementation plan for the plans that they had for all of us at the border. Napolitano, Jay Johnson, Kirsten Nielsen, John Kelly. I worked for all of them. Every single one of them, at some moment in their tenure as the secretary, had an epiphany about the border. They said yes to those jobs. They took an oath. They got confirmed by the Senate, and they had an ideal about what their job was going to be like. Oh, I have this infrastructure protection thing I have to do. I have, the Federal Protective Service, and then there's these guys at ICE and these guys at CBP and the Border Patrol. And they thought they were going to be working on all of those things in equivalent timeline. That's not the case.
Yeah.
They realized sometime in their career, like, oh my gosh, this border thing is going to drive me crazy.
Yeah.
Alejandro Mayorkas is the only guy that knows that problem the day he walks in the job.
Yes, sir.
Because he watched us fix the surge in 2014 and 2015. He knows what happens on the border when you release in mass 85% of the encounters. He knows what happens.
Yes.
And he knew that he didn't have that problem when he walked in the door because we had the migrant protection protocols, we had the asylum accords with the triangle countries, and what did they do? They tore it all down.
Yep.
They reversed MPP, and I think at the time there were 320,000 people who were enrolled in MPP waiting in Mexico. He let them all come in.
Yep.
And told the world that he was ending that program. He ended the agreement that we had with Mexico.
Yep.
Ended the asylum accords with Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. And then that's bad. That's like terrible. That's the worst decision ever. But he knew what was going to happen, and he was told by Rodney Scott and others, himself, hey, augment the Border Patrol, give them those processing facilities, because when you kick over this apple cart, it's going to be really, really bad. They not only disregarded that advice, they did it and pretended it wasn't their fault and said it wasn't a crisis, knowing full well what was going to happen. So this guy gets the job knowing exactly how this all works. He does not have to have the epiphany because he knows about what goes on at the border and how important it is to the rest of the country.
I say he'd been training for this moment his entire career, right? He's hated the immigration laws of this country. He's hated the Border Patrol in many different ways. But here's the thing, Chief. So one of the things that I get hit with every now and then is, well, the Border Patrol Union endorsed Mayorkas and then recently came out just weeks ago saying that he knows what to do and he wants to do it, but he's a victim of this administration, Chief.
Well, we're all victims of this administration. Why is he there?
Yeah.
Why is he there? He knows better. Okay, so like if he really wanted to move the needle, and do what needs to be done on the southwest border, and he's not being allowed to, he has an option.
Yeah.
He has a choice to make.
Just like anybody does, yeah.
He could get on CNN with a phone call and announce his resignation. Like, will it get better with him leaving? Probably not.
Not under this administration, but this is on purpose. He went in, and this is basically the Obama administration dream come true. They wanted to get to this point. They wanted to be here. And this is just a continuation of that. Nobody has any illusions that Joe Biden is making his own decisions right here.
Yeah, no, I agree. He is doing what people are expecting of him in the chain of command, but he's also going out there and saying that for months and months and months, for an entire year, that it wasn't a crisis,
right?
And that the border isn't in control, and all these people are getting put in proceedings for removal. Like, all that is a true statement. They're all being placed in proceedings, the ones that are encountered anyway.
Right.
but he knows full well that alternatives to detention is not a removal process.
No.
It's a sop to the left.
Yeah.
It is the least effective way to get people who are in the country illegally removed, even after they're ordered deported by a judge.
Right.
He knows full well that that is not working. And then on top of that, Gil, he went out in public a number of times and said, I'm going to paraphrase, if you're in the country illegally, ICE is not going to target you.
Well, it's not a
Which is
deportable
fine.
offense, is what he said.
Yeah, like it's fine. Like if he wants to set that as policy, okay. Why do you have to tell everybody? Why are you telling the entire world that the ICE priorities do not include people who cross the border illegally, which is a federal crime, which
Yes.
is against immigration law,
Yes.
right? It takes away our sovereignty. I understand. You have to have, as a law enforcement officer, you have to have priorities. You can't arrest everybody. You can't solve all the crimes. You can't control every inch of the border. You have to prioritize the resources that you have. He doesn't have to tell everybody that.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to tell them. And then this administration, I'm going to get on my soapbox here for a little bit.
Go for it.
This
Go for it.
administration, the spokesperson at the White House and the secretary and others, on day one, Joe Biden put forth an immigration plan to fix the problems at our southwest border.
Yeah.
I would encourage people to go to whitehouse.gov and read the fact sheet for the legislative package that he moved on day 2, I think it was, to the Congress. It is amnesty for every other illegal alien that's in the United States and a pathway to citizenship for most of them.
Yes.
And the cutoff for those that will be eligible for relief under the bill that he put forward are the day he became president. So all of the millions of people who have crossed the border illegally since he became the president would not qualify under his fix for immigration.
Right.
Okay, so think about that. There are estimates that about 11 million people have come into the country since this guy's been the president.
Not
And he's
counting
telling
gotaways.
everybody, and he's telling everybody that he's got a fix for it if Congress would just act on his bill.
Yeah.
It's all BS, and he knows it, and they all know it.
Yeah.
And there's a provision in the bill that says if you were deported in the previous administration, you could apply for relief under the bill.
Jeez.
So when they talk about how they want to fix this problem, they are talking out of their backside,
Right.
because their bill would legalize everybody that's in the country now,
Right.
but it accepts the people who have come in since he's become the president. But they're going to look backward into all of the people who were deported when Donald Trump was the president and see if they qualify for relief under the immigration law. It's all complete horse.
Yeah,
poo.
it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. But
it
who's
is.
going to sort all that out? Gee, that's the thing. The average American has no clue. Like you said, as soon as somebody finds out I'm a Border Patrol agent, they want to that for the next. My wife just rolls her eyes. She's like, "Oh God," because we know we're the next 2 hours. That's all we're going to talk about, right? And it's a mess from the inside out and all the way around. But with all that said, with whatever going on, we're also starting to see a lot of controversy come out of the patrol itself, right? We're starting to see we recently saw the chief of the academy get relieved of duty, and now just the second in command for the Border Patrol relieved of duty. The rank and file is just starting to feel like we've had enough of the abuses. We've had enough of being rolled over by individuals who abuse their power, whether it's sexual misadventures, whether it's misconduct, or it's abuse of power, or all those kind of things. And they're starting to feel like they need to retaliate some way, or not retaliate. That's the wrong word, but they're done turning a blind eye. So what?
Yeah, it's unfortunate. There's no excuse, especially from the leadership level, to engage in this kind of misconduct. There's no excuse for it. And one of the things that it's painful to see,
Yes.
people that you care about and that you trust and that have been given the responsibility to lead others, and they make these kinds of critical errors in judgment and or worse. It's really very unfortunate. I was a deciding official. I was a recommending official. Like when you get up to the top of the heap, I had to fire agents. It's a difficult thing to do for somebody who loves the Border Patrol to say, you can't be this anymore. But we have to hold each other to account. And, I want the agents to realize that the preponderance of us, that family, that green family, are good, hardworking patriots. And the ones that make these mistakes are going to be held to account. And they're going to be cut out of the herd in whatever way that works. And it's unfortunate. God rest his soul, Joe Garza was one of the first chiefs I ever knew as a person. It was always that guy in the front office, for a long time in my career. But I got to know Joe Garza when he was the chief in Loredo, and then he moved on to the Valley before he retired. He was the chief at RGV, and he used to say something that always resonated with me when people did these terrible things. He said, Ron, what you need to understand is that we are forced to recruit and work with people from the human race. And they're going to let us down. That is the human condition. When I will tell agents this, I'm praying for you, hang in there. We need you, and hopefully you're gonna be able to do your jobs very soon. And this static and this nonsense and this misconduct that happens up the chain, when you see it, you need to tell somebody about it. You need to report it. You need to hold people to account for what they've done wrong. And it isn't reflective of the management cadre. It's these individuals who have chosen a bad path and made others pay for it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But they're going to be held to account. And so I would tell them that, when you see these things happening, you need to report it, and you need to hold people to account for it. And I know, Jason Owens is going to hold those managers to account. I had to do that when I was the boss at the headquarters. I had to, people that were near and dear to me, friends of mine, I had to show them the door. And that's a very difficult thing to do all the way around. And it is not reflective of the other men and women patriots that I worked with every single day. These people who make these terrible choices in their lives, we got to point it out, and we got to cut them out of the herd as soon as we can.
Well, that's the thing, right? So I've been down on this whole centennial based on the situation that's going on right now. But honestly, 3 years of this horrific time does not discount the 100 years that the patrol has been in service and doing the things they do. And it sure doesn't discount my career, because my 25 years are the best damn job I ever had. And that doesn't discount that, right? So I've had to move away from that a little bit as far as that goes. But two things I want to talk about before we start winding down, because I want to give you a chance to talk about your candidacy for the Senate for Virginia. But I want to mention your lovely wife, Nuri. We both know that this conversation is happening because she told us to. Right, she's in charge, and I made sure that I watched my P's and Q's, because I do not want to get in trouble with her. Talk to me a little bit about the Border Patrol family network that you guys do.
Yeah. So I have the blessing of being with the best woman I know for the last 35 years. All those moves all over the country, I had the comfort of saying, hey, I've got someone at my house that's taking care of those kids, and they're not going to want for anything while she's in the orbit. And she supported all of the things. I would not have been successful in my career without the support of a good woman at home. And so the Border Patrol Agent Family Network is an extension of her understanding the challenges that Border Patrol families face, and together us recognizing that the institution, the Border Patrol, CBP, HR, there are some functions that they perform on behalf of agent wellness, or they call it resiliency, whatever they call it these days.
EAP, chaplaincy, peer support.
Yeah, chaplaincy, peer support, EAP. Those are institutionally based programs that do good if you access them, if you access the right people that are within them.
Correct. Well said.
What we realized late in my career is if the agent on duty doesn't bring the link to the website home, doesn't bring the beneficiary form, doesn't understand how the insurance works, if he doesn't bring that, if he or she doesn't bring that into the home, that family that's there living and supporting them doesn't know it exists.
Yeah.
And so her calling is to knit these families together and understand the culture, understand the life, understand the job from their point of view as a spouse at home. And so she's got thousands of people who are on her page and communicating with her, communicating amongst themselves, supporting, amplifying the good news of the Border Patrol, amplifying the good things that are done by the Border Patrol in our communities, and then helping people when they need it. Simple things like, hey, I'm moving to Holton Sector. Which town along the northern border is best for the schools? Which is where can I buy an affordable house? That's the low end of the spectrum, like that kind of cultural support, if you will.
On the ground, yeah.
On the high end of that spectrum, people call and message her and say, my agent spouse is going to kill themselves if they don't stop doing whatever they're doing. And so she accesses outside of the institution help for those people, because we have a network of friends in the faith community.
And I want to emphasize that. I want to emphasize that because right now, the biggest problem with the agency's resiliency program, there's a good handful of chaplains, good handful of peer support, and the EAP I have a little problem with because they hire people that are fresh out of school or have no law enforcement experience. And you and I both know you can't just bring a psychologist in that does not have experience with law enforcement, right? And those kind of things. So you guys Nuri offers through the Border Patrol Family Network, an alternative outside the agency for them to be able to go and feel completely confident that their stuff's not going to get leaked out. They're not going to become part of the rumor mill. They're not going to become another basically casualty of the fact that the confidentiality in DHS EVP is completely gone.
Yeah.
So she offers that. She's offering that, or you guys are offering that.
We have the blessing of people who care about the men and women of the Border Patrol and their families.
Yes.
We translate for them and say, hey, this person needs help in this kind of situation, and so. And just having that communication across the board about things that are happening and about the challenges that couples face, that first responder families face, and so we've spent our time and treasure to help people do those things.
Yes.
And then she has access to a network. It's not a big machine. It's very ad hoc, but it is effective. And she's reconstructed some careers and some families from having the worst things happen to them.
Well, I have a lot of love and respect for her and what she does and as well. So a couple of things before we close. Talk to the agents right now in the field. And what do you say to them, about surviving this situation right now?
Yeah, I would say what a couple of journeymen told me early on, this too shall pass. It's not going to be like this all the time. I came into a Border Patrol in 1985. 1986, they issued this huge amnesty. Where supposedly 3 million people, I think it ended up being more like 9 million people, got, legal status in the United States after coming here illegally. And it was very, there was a lot of churn. There was a lot of turmoil amongst the workforce and the journeymen who felt like they got betrayed. What we're seeing now is unlike anything I've ever seen in my career. So I'm not going to pretend I know what it feels like to be out there because
agreed,
I've never seen anything like it. But I would ask them to recognize that this will not continue to be this way forever. And so this will pass. Please hang in there. Do your job. You have the blessing to not have to worry about the politics, right? If you're doing the right thing, if you're doing your job, then you're going to be just fine. I know it's frustrating. I know morale is in the tank, but it's not going to be like this forever. And so I would ask those that care about this country and care about our institution, the Border Patrol, to hang in there, because this will pass and we'll be back to, like a more sane environment, and we'll give you the tools back to to make it all work on the border, allow you to do your jobs. That's what has to happen. It's not going to happen quickly, and it's going to require a change in leadership. But the men and women of the Border Patrol, they just need to hang in there until that is true for them. I do have a lot of confidence and faith and optimism in Jason Owens. You know, there's these scandals going on. That's his peer group now. That was my peer group before.
Right.
And so he's going to have to make hard decisions about, cutting people out of the herd and things like that. But he is a strong, faithful man. And I have confidence that he will do the best he can, given the circumstances, to make things right as possible.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. Yeah, you probably know my track record with the previous chief, and I will say this: that right now, I do believe in my heart that Jason Owens is the chief we need right now to hold us together, to hold the psyche and of the Border Patrol and our agents together until we see what happens in November, and then what happens beyond that. But Chief, spend a few moments talking to us about you could have retired. You could be enjoying your life. They say the same thing about me. I am enjoying my life 100%. I have a calling, but you have a calling too. And you could have retired, but you chose the path of running for Congress. So I kind of feel, Chief, that sometimes you'd rather be chasing a group of smugglers over a canyon in the middle of the night, armed to the teeth, than dealing with the politics of what's going on right now. So tell us about your campaign.
Yeah, so I'm inspired because I cannot stand by and watch what's going on in the country. As the leader, the blessing I had to lead in the Border Patrol, part of that time was spent with Congress, with the House, with the Senate. The pay reform package in 2015, the reconstruction of relocation benefits, fixing the border, the SBI net, all of those things. Like, that was us communicating to the Hill. And so I understand how the Hill works, how the Senate operates, what their incentives are to do well, what their incentives are for spending and justifications for budgets, et cetera. And so I think I have skills that I can offer in that arena. In 2024, in November, when we're voting for president, the Senate seat here in Virginia, my opponent on the Democrat side is Tim Kaine. He didn't run on a $34 trillion debt. He didn't run on 130% of GDP debt ratio. He didn't run on an open border and the lawlessness and fentanyl deaths all across the country. And so I'm inspired to try this, to take it on. I think that if the right candidate gets this nomination, we can pin this guy to the mat, and we can bring some sanity to the office of the United States Senate in the form of the Virginia Senate seat. I want to use the skills that I acquired while I was serving the people to continue to serve. And like you said, I retired in 2019. I did start a second career. I work for a great company now that provides for Border Patrol, body-worn cameras and tasers. And I took that because it was additive to my team, right? It was something that I could stay, close to the men and women that are out there and help them where I can. And that's why I took that job, and why I'm in this race, because I want to serve. I have more to offer.
Okay.
And I think being in the United States Senate and having a sane view of how we save and spend money in our federal budgets, how we control and protect our country, especially at U.S. borders, I want to do that. I want to do that. I'm inspired to do it. I think people in this state and around the country deserve people in the House and the Senate that know what that oath means when they take it.
Well, as you can see, people put complete stock in the presidency and the election, and it's true, but it's the people populating the House and the Senate that really make all the decisions. So you're going to be going in there for a constituency in Virginia to take care of them, to watch out for them, to look out for them, but you're also at the same time going to be affecting policy for the rest of us in the entire country as well. So I wish you a ton of luck maneuvering through that, through that shark-infested waters of politics and things like that. But if anybody can handle it, you can. And as my final word, I just again want to put a shout out to one of my favorite people in the whole world, and that's your wife, Nuri Vitiello. I love her, and I'll always work with her, and I'll always do my best for her, and make sure I never upset her, because I've seen what happens when she gets upset at people. She's a force to be reckoned with. But final word, Chief, before we shut down for the day.
Yeah, no, just thanks for doing this, Gil. It's great talking to you and reminiscing and talking about the future as well. Thanks for what you do. You know, information to the workforce and to others who care about the Border Patrol is important. It's not enough of people talking about it and talking about the truth and how good and compassionate and patriotic the men and women that you and I worked with are. And so you giving them that voice is important. And I appreciate
Thank
you sharing the time with me so that I could talk about them and praise them as well. And yeah, just like I said before, you know, we're going to pray for all of them, and we're going to hope that they hang in there, because better times are ahead. Things don't always stay the same. And so I want them to lift their heads and do their job patriotically, and just hang in there. I really appreciate what you do. And there's millions of Americans out there that love and praise them. They just don't get to hear it enough.
Right, right. Well, to that I say a big 10-4 and an amen. Thank you,
Amen.
Chief.
Thank you, Gil.